My husband, Charles, claimed he had no time to accompany me to my prenatal checkups, yet there he was, sprawled on the couch watching the World Cup with my best friend, Lynn. Lynn, who always showered me with love and affection, who chased after my favorite idols with me, cooked my favorite dishes, and was going to be my child's godmother. And in the end, she slept with my husband. What could Charles possibly be so busy with that he couldn't spare time for his wife and child? After finishing my last checkup, I met my mother, who immediately launched into a complaint. Nearly 9 months pregnant, and he still lets you go to your appointments alone? Men are all untrustworthy. The hospital corridor was bustling, and my mother's loud reproaches were clearly aimed at Charles, making me feel embarrassed. She placed her hand on my belly, her eyes reflecting undisguised displeasure. "It's okay, Mom. He's on a business trip." He actually planned to come back early to join me, but I told him not to worry. I always considered myself healthy, despite my anemia worsening recently, but overall, my pregnancy was stable. The baby inside me was remarkably well-behaved, rarely bothering me. I've always been independent. If I can do something myself, I prefer not to ask anyone for help, even my closest loved ones. Charles had a love-hate relationship with this trait. He admired my strength and self-reliance, but sometimes wished I would lean on him more, be a little more jiao-qi, playfully clingy. Just as I finished speaking, my phone rang. My mother helped me sit on a chair, silently gathering my medical documents, no longer looking at me. Charles called, his voice full of concern, asking about my health. He said he was still in City D, but his work was almost done. He'd have dinner with clients and then catch the last high-speed train back to City B. Is Lynn back too? Is she doing okay? Does your project suit her? Lynn had been my childhood best friend, and Charles is too. We'd known each other since elementary school. This year, she'd transferred to the project department where he worked, but they had never really gotten along. According to Lynn, she'd always disliked Charles's seemingly humble demeanor, which she called fake, while he couldn't stand her arrogance and coolness. Charles let out a dry chuckle, his voice familiar when mentioning Lynn. "Your wife already said so. Do you think I'd dare do otherwise?" Then he started to whine playfully. Hey, what's wrong? Can't you pay a little more attention to your husband? It's always Lynn. We exchanged a few laughs. I wished him a safe trip and hung up. My mother helped me to the parking lot, continuing her incessant murmuring on the way home. My ears were almost numb from her nagging. Never had I wished for Charles to come home so quickly to rescue me from this situation. But as the car stopped at a red light, I idly scrolled through my phone and accidentally saw something strange. A minute ago, Lynn had posted something on social media. In the dim hotel light, her hands were tied with a tie, lying on pristine white sheets. The atmosphere around her was alluring. Under the photo, she wrote, "Business trip, watching the ball game and beating the beast." I was about to comment, surprised that after all these years of being reserved, she had suddenly let loose for a night. But then my eyes fixated on the tie in the picture, gray-blue stripes with a small, crimson heart, a limited edition. It was the birthday gift I had given Charles. "Yan, your mother told you to use your phone less or you'll go blind." My mother's voice echoed in my ears, but I acted as if I hadn't heard her. I immediately clicked on Lynn's profile picture to go to her personal page, but the post had vanished as if it had never existed. I must have been seeing things. The car continued, and I resumed eating my cake, but suddenly, a sharp pain seized my stomach. My vision blurred, and consciousness slowly slipped away. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, an IV drip in my arm. Outside the window, it was already dark. I hadn't been eating well recently and had eaten little for lunch, so my anemia had flared up again. But I never imagined a photo could make me faint like that. Opening my eyes, I saw my mother sitting beside me, her eyes red, her face etched with worry. I gently placed a hand on my belly, my heart aching. "You always make your mother worry. You married someone from an ordinary family, got pregnant in less than a year. Your mother raised you alone, only wishing you'd marry a wealthy man and live a comfortable life. Yet you..." My mother's familiar lament filled the air, the same complaints I'd heard to the point of exhaustion. I understood she only worried I'd suffer. After my father passed away, she had gone through so much hardship raising me alone. When I fell in love with Charles, she always criticized his background, fearing I'd be at a disadvantage. But in reality, I was a brand design team leader with a decent income. Charles was also advancing in his career, his salary steadily increasing, and now he could even lead his own project team. We had bought a new house, a new car, and our child was on the way. Everything was going well. If it weren't for that strange post, I wouldn't have paid any attention to my mother's criticisms. Our family wasn't as wealthy as Lynn's, we didn't have to worry about anything. But if Charles was always so busy that he couldn't be with me, couldn't even take care of me when I was sick, what good was earning so much money? I had heard these words countless times, but today, they made me feel more bitter than ever. If I wasn't seeing things, what did that photo mean? And what was the truth behind the long-standing rivalry between Charles and Lynn? I just wanted to call immediately and get clear answers. But just then, the hospital room door suddenly burst open. Charles rushed in, dragging a suitcase. The photo had been deleted, leaving no evidence, but I didn't want the misunderstanding to linger. I asked him directly, "Where's the gray-blue striped tie I gave you?" Charles paused for a moment, startled, then calmly walked over and gently embraced me. I don't know if I was being overly sensitive, but a faint scent of cigarette smoke mixed with women's perfume wafted from him, a strange fragrance I'd never encountered before. But I remembered clearly that since I started planning my pregnancy, Charles had resolutely quit smoking. "It's in the suitcase. Why? Are you uncomfortable?" I weakly pushed him away, a choking sensation in my chest, my eyes already red. "Take it out. Let me see it." Charles frowned slightly but said nothing more. He set the suitcase down, opened it, and took out the tie I had given him for his birthday. The gray-blue striped tie was neatly folded, the small crimson heart still perfectly in place, with no signs of anything unusual. In that moment, I felt as if the social media post had been nothing more than a nightmare that had never truly existed. Charles and I looked at each other, his gaze calm, as if all my suspicions were unfounded. I suddenly felt so foolish. Since becoming pregnant, I rarely lost control of my emotions. Work and personal goals always kept me busy. Charles's frequent absences helped me cultivate patience, and my mother's repeated nagging inadvertently became another form of pressure. I constantly reminded myself not to let emotions dictate my actions, not to let hormonal mood swings affect my thinking. It was only when night fell, when I felt the gentle kicks of the tiny life within me, when I saw Charles's hand wrapped around my waist each night, that a vague, undefined anxiety would surface. I worried I wouldn't be able to balance my career and motherhood, feared my body would change, and even felt a vague unease about whether the man beside me would remain the same. "Charles, I told you, what's so special about that old tie that you keep looking at it?" My mother couldn't hold back anymore, her voice sharp with reproach. "You should worry about your wife first, shouldn't you? Her belly is so big and she's anemic to the point of fainting. All you ever do is work and make money." Charles replied softly, "I'm sorry, Mom. I've asked the company for a few months off. From now on, I'll always be with Yan. Mom, please don't be angry." Too much anger isn't good for your health. He squeezed my hand tightly, the warmth from his palm making my heart flutter. His eyes were full of worry. "I'm sorry, Yan, I've made you suffer." I hesitated, starting to wonder if I had truly misjudged things. Just then my belly gave a small, involuntary twitch. Charles saw it, and his eyes lit up with the joyous anticipation of a father-to-be. He knelt down, gently placed his hand on my stomach, and softly said, "Daddy's late, I'm sorry, Mommy and baby, I've made you two suffer." My heart suddenly softened. I knew Charles always worked hard for this family to build our future. This marriage was never easy. Perhaps I shouldn't have doubted him. Just as I was about to reach out and embrace him, the hospital room door suddenly swung open. Lynn rushed in, completely oblivious to the intimacy between Charles and me. Her face was filled with genuine worry, but as she drew closer, I again caught that faint scent, the same one mixed with cigarette smoke I'd noticed earlier. All my earlier doubts seemed to have found their answer. "Yan, why are you anemic again? You look so pale." Lynn frowned, scrutinizing me for a few seconds before turning to greet my mother. Her gaze, as it swept over Charles, was as cold as ever. "Lynn, my dear, you came all this way so late. Quick, help me manage this little Yan. She's worried me all day long, never a moment's peace." My mother's relentless nagging began anew. Lynn maintained her cool demeanor, but her hands gently tended to me as usual. She lightly pinched my ear and then gave me a glare. A strange, inexplicable mix of emotions swelled within me. My belly was large, my body felt heavy, and after fainting today, I truly felt exhausted. Tonight, for the first time, I didn't want to try to appear strong anymore. In front of me were 3 people, all worried about me. With people to lean on, I should have felt content and happy. I truly wished it was all just my overthinking. Your hand is so cold. Take this to warm up. Lynn unexpectedly pulled my hand away from Charles's and slipped a hand warmer into it, letting a pleasant warmth spread. I looked up at her, my mind reeling with chaotic thoughts. Over the past few months of my pregnancy, as Charles grew busier, it was Lynn who was by my side more often. She took me to my prenatal appointments, helped me register, waited in line for medicine, cooked red date porridge for me, worried about my severe anemia, and even researched special menus for me. Before she transferred to Charles's company, whenever he went on business trips, Lynn would arrive at my house on time, finding ways to care for me with various nutritious meals. Her presence was in my pregnancy diary almost every day. I looked at Charles. He had stood up, his head bowed in silence, not once glancing at Lynn. Before, the distance between them wasn't unusual, as they simply didn't like each other. But now, after seeing that photo, after noticing the strange scent lingering on Charles, the silence between them carried an oddly unsettling feeling. Lynn's abruptly deleted post, combined with the unanswered questions, left me feeling frustrated and confused. For the first time, Lynn felt like a stranger. For the first time, I didn't want to see her. For the first time, I was afraid of losing her. Noticing I wasn't well, Lynn gave a few more instructions, telling me to rest well, then simply nodded lightly at Charles before leaving the hospital room. After she left, my mother couldn't help but sigh. Lynn is getting older. Why hasn't she found anyone yet? My spa has so many wealthy ladies and powerful families. I should introduce her to some new connections soon. Before I could react, Charles spoke up. Mom, Lynn has very high standards. She won't easily take to those people. He suddenly interjected, as if hitting a sore spot for my mother. My mother retorted, "What does Lynn's business have to do with you? You should worry about your own wife and child." I didn't want to join the argument, but a vague suspicion arose in my heart. It's true that Lynn is special. She's been different from you since she was little, Charles. Don't you think your student Henry would be a good match for Lynn? Why don't you try to set them up? Before I could finish, Charles immediately objected. He's not good enough. My gaze slowly darkened, staring at Charles, as if the answer I didn't want to face was gradually becoming clear. Let's talk about it later. Your health is more important now. I'll call the nurse, then take you home. He seemed to sense something was amiss, then fell silent and left the hospital room. On the way home, Charles and I didn't say a word. I feigned exhaustion to hide my frustration. I genuinely didn't want to delve deeper into this. No matter what, I still believed Charles wouldn't do anything to hurt me, and that person absolutely could not be Lynn. Back home, he embraced me. Charles half knelt on the new Ultraman rug, silently helping me change my shoes. He brought out a basin of warm water, carefully wiping my face and washing my hands, taking meticulous care of me as always. When he wasn't on a business trip, Charles was always kind and thoughtful. His attentiveness was no less than Lynn's. Recently, he had even suggested I quit my job to be a full-time stay-at-home mother to take care of our child. We had argued about it, though I knew he only wanted me not to work too hard. Lynn, Charles, and I were once neighbors, attending the same elementary school class. When we were little, Lynn never liked playing with boys and Charles was a model student. Only I would shuttle between the two of them. In college, Lynn went to study abroad, while I stayed in B-City to pursue fine arts. In those days without her, I tried harder but also felt a profound loneliness. During a charity event, I unexpectedly re-encountered Charles. He was the event organizer, taking me to seek sponsorships and working with me to complete design plans. His intelligence and sincerity made me feel warm. Finally, at the celebration party after the event, I sang Ultraman for my Ultraman. When the song ended, Charles embraced me in front of everyone. He confessed his feelings and asked me to be his girlfriend. After my internship, I was offered a permanent position at the company with a salary higher than the industry average. I shared the good news with Lynn. Despite the time difference, she enthusiastically congratulated me over the phone. At the same time, Charles also officially joined a large company thanks to his abilities. On our anniversary, just as Lynn returned home, I dragged her to meet Charles. We raised our glasses in celebration, and I introduced them to each other. But even as adults, they still couldn't get along. Charles maintained a cool demeanor throughout the evening, while Lynn still carried herself with an arrogant, aloof air. I once asked Lynn why, and she just gave a dry laugh, saying she disliked the fakeness of intelligent people like him. Still, she wished me happiness. As for Charles, he had no good feelings for her either, only commenting briefly, arrogant and conceited. I didn't force them to be close, I just let things be. It wasn't until Lynn transferred to Charles's company, specifically to the project team he was leading, that I vaguely realized something had changed between them. But at the time, I didn't give it a second thought. A few months ago, after a business trip to City X, I went to the airport to pick them up. Charles handed me a souvenir t-shirt, saying it was a gift for me. Seeing the Chibai Ultraman on the shirt, I couldn't help but melt at its cuteness. He smiled and pulled open his jacket, revealing a small, adorable Ultraman on his left chest. Leaning close to my ear, he whispered in a low, warm voice, "I am your personal Ultraman." Later, during lunch, I went to the restroom and accidentally saw Lynn take off her jacket, revealing the t-shirt underneath. On her left chest wasn't Ultraman, but a small monster, right over her heart. A strange feeling suddenly welled up inside me, but I couldn't identify it. Lynn just casually said she bought it because she liked the design and didn't want to interfere with our sweet relationship, so she chose a different image. So, I didn't think anything more of it. But now, recalling that moment, my stomach churned with discomfort. Charles, beside me, was fast asleep. I tried to suppress my unease, gently got out of bed, picked up his phone, and walked into the bathroom. The password was my birthday, 507. In a flash, the screen unlocked. I scrolled through his friend list, initially seeing nothing unusual until I reached the very bottom. Under Favorites, there was an ID with a few spaces, followed by the name Little Monster. A strong intuition urged me to click on that person's profile. The gender was listed as male, but the friend permissions explicitly stated, "Cannot view this person's status and posts." I had read online about this trick. Some people would block suspicious individuals on social media so their partners couldn't find out. My hands trembled as I opened the Posts section, and then an image appeared that stunned me, unforgettable. The latest post was only 6 hours old. If I remembered correctly, I had been in my mother's car, waiting at a red light then. In the dim light, a pair of hands tied with a tie rested on pristine white hotel sheets. The scene was filled with ambiguity. Below the photo was the caption, "Business trip, watching the ball game and beating the beast." The tie looked eerily familiar, gray-blue stripes with a red heart, a limited edition, exactly like the one Charles had taken from his suitcase. My whole body froze. Lynn's post hadn't been deleted, she had just posted it in the wrong place. It turned out this sordid photo was still here, in the small account named Little Monster. A sharp pain surged through me, piercing every fiber of my being. I continued to scroll down and discovered even more disgusting things. The Little Monster profile was like another world of Lynn's, filled with dark secrets, a strange version of her I had never known. Cigarettes in the company fire escape, hurried kisses in the parking lot, even lingering goodbyes right outside my apartment building, all recorded by her as sweet memories. They shamelessly reveled in the time stolen from me, immersed in their illicit pleasure, without remorse or hesitation. Lynn secretly enjoyed her sinful happiness, yet still feigned hurt, even remembering me. My head felt numb. I was horrified to realize that she was simultaneously caring for me and shamelessly entangled with my man. Based on the timeline, I guess this started a few months ago. At that time, I was pregnant, my moods were erratic, and sometimes I would argue with Charles over trivial matters, even crying. But he was always patient, always understanding. I thought I had found a good man. It turned out he was just looking for another place to vent his pent-up emotions. Why were they together? One was my lover, once the warmest sunshine in my life. The other was my confidant, who had been with me since childhood, like the gentle moon illuminating the dark night. They concealed it too skillfully, and that's what hurt me exponentially. A violent wave of nausea swept over me. I couldn't hold it back and rushed to the sink, vomiting all the late-night food Charles had cooked for me. Charles was a very light sleeper. Hearing the noise, he immediately shot up and rushed over. Seeing me clutching his phone, he looked momentarily panicked. He reached out to help me up, but I pushed him away forcefully. "Yan, what's wrong?" "Get out," I screamed. He was stunned. I looked at Charles, still as handsome as ever, but today his face, besides weariness, also showed clear panic. I felt it was unfair. I was the only one enduring a heavy body, changing figure, erratic moods, emotional turmoil, and incessant aches and pains. What about him? Charles was still free, still dashing, still shamelessly indulging in another's arms as if nothing had ever bound him. The resentment I had suppressed throughout my pregnancy suddenly erupted, surging powerfully through every fiber of my being. I shattered, tears pouring down uncontrollably, feeling both humiliated and bitter. Charles seemed to still cling to a fragile hope. "Yan, are you feeling very uncomfortable? Let me take you to the hospital, okay?" He deliberately ignored the fact that I had read the disgusting things on his phone. For the first time, I looked at him with eyes full of hatred, eyes that wanted to rip out his heart, liver, and lungs to see what on earth was inside that could have changed him so much. My voice was cold, each word a knife piercing his heart. Little monster and football, were they beautiful? As soon as I finished speaking, my stomach churned again and a violent wave of nausea surged. I couldn't help but rush back to the sink. It was strange before, Charles and Lynn always clashed, but only when watching football did they temporarily make peace. I had never been interested in football. They both loved the Argentine team. Football used to be a bridge that gave them a chance to talk to each other a little more. Unexpectedly, now it had become my nightmare. You saw everything?" Charles's eyes immediately reddened. He knelt on one knee, looking up at me, his gaze complex, a mix of humiliation and a hint of relief that the secret was exposed. But I couldn't let him feel relieved. I swung my hand and slapped him hard across the face, then another. His left cheek was red, and his right cheek was starting to swell. He didn't dare to dodge, and I didn't want to stop. They hadn't hesitated to betray me behind my back, so why should I go easy on them? Is this something humans can do? You too, you sneak around behind my back, then pretend to be at odds in front of me. Don't you get tired? My voice choked, even though I didn't want it to. I knew that as soon as these words came out, I would lose the two most important people in my life. Ignoring Charles's calls, I hugged my belly and staggered back to my room, immediately calling my mother to pick me up. I didn't want to see him for another minute. I would never forgive him, even if the baby in my womb would forever tie us together. I could raise my child by myself without Charles. He panicked, crying and begging me not to leave. I didn't even bother to look at him because every second that passed filled me with disgust. "Then get out, never appear before me again." Charles burst into tears, his former pride and dashing demeanor completely shattered. "I won't go anywhere, Yan. This is our home, you're my wife, and you're carrying my child. Where do you want me to go? I know I made a mistake, please give me a chance. I swear I'll never repeat this mistake. Just please don't harm your health." He clung to me, refusing to let go. We struggled until the doorbell rang. My mother had arrived. Charles went to open the door, but as soon as she saw my condition, my mother, without a word, immediately slapped him twice. He didn't even have time to react, his face so swollen it was almost unrecognizable. She didn't bother to pack anything, just pulled me away from that place. Charles tried to hold me back, but I only said one sentence to end it all. "Charles, from this moment on, we are officially over." The moment you secretly entangled with Lynn, you should have known this day would come. In the elevator, I clenched my hands, trying to control the pain in my heart. When Charles first took me to see the house, he had said there was a very good kindergarten nearby, and this area had the most beautiful green landscape. Together, we had chosen every piece of furniture, slowly transforming an empty house into a warm home. Cute models on the bedroom windowsill, bowls and plates in the kitchen, bookshelves filled with parenting books I used to flip through every day, even the baby stroller Charles had assembled himself. I had left too many memories here. How could I truly leave without any regret? But precisely because of that, I had no way back. Charles and Lynn had shattered all my illusions, destroying everything beautiful. Salty tears fell onto my lips. Outside the window, the cold wind howled, snapping tree branches, and even the warmth of the car heater couldn't soothe my heart. My mother didn't say a word the entire way, just quietly drove me home. As I stepped through the door, I saw a photo of my mother and me from a trip. We stood by an ancient city wall, my father's absence palpable. Tears immediately streamed down my face. "Mom, I'm sorry," I cried until I couldn't breathe. "I didn't listen to you, and I ruined everything. Perhaps I'll have to raise my child alone too." My mother silently wiped her tears, her eyes red, but she didn't scold me. She just held my hand, comforting me. "You didn't do anything wrong. You don't need to worry about anything. Just one more child. I have experience. I'll raise him with you." During my days living at my mother's house, she temporarily set aside her work to care for me. I felt very guilty, but could do nothing else but try to nourish my pregnancy and not let her worry too much. but someone was determined not to let me rest in peace. Charles seemed to have gone mad, coming to find me almost every day. He would kneel and beg, then cry, doing everything he could to earn my forgiveness. But my mother adamantly refused to let him into the house. I also didn't care what outsiders were saying. At first, he pleaded for me to come back, then daily brought soup and sent parenting books and maternity clothes, but I never once glanced at him. Years of affection couldn't withstand a moment of temptation, so what was the point of all this? He was once the person I trusted most, but now I only found him pathetic and ridiculous. I suggested a divorce, but Charles disagreed. I had to resort to a lawyer. When he received the settlement papers, he refused to sign. My phone was flooded with messages of apology and promises, but I deleted them all without hesitation. My mother asked if I regretted it. I just quietly placed my hand on my belly. The road ahead would certainly not be easy, but I knew I would make it. No matter what, this baby was everything to me, and the only thing I wanted was for Charles to disappear from my life forever. Lynn tried to visit many times, but each time my mother firmly turned her away. My mother, who had once loved her so much, now hated her just as fiercely. One time, as my mother and I were about to go to the hospital, Lynn, despite everything, blocked our way to apologize. She sobbed, her face full of anguish, almost kneeling to beg. Seeing people around starting to pull out their phones to record, my mother didn't want to cause a commotion or affect the hospital, so she reluctantly agreed to go down to the coffee shop on the first floor to talk. I remained silent. I also wanted to hear what she had to say. If it were a stranger, I probably wouldn't have cared, but this was Lynn, someone who had once been so important to me. My feelings for her were even deeper than for Charles. No longer maintaining her cool demeanor, Lynn tearfully said that she was unforgivable, and her biggest mistake was losing control and hurting me. If you're just going to say these meaningless words, then can we leave now? The hurt has already happened. What good are apologies now? I didn't want my emotions to fluctuate too much, fearing it would affect the baby in my womb, so I pulled my mother's hand and stood up to leave. Lynn panicked, hastily grabbing my hand, but then let go, afraid of hurting me. She looked up at me, her eyes red, tears glistening in the corners. Suddenly, she slapped herself across the face, her expression filled with despair. She trembled as she spoke. "Yan, don't you want to know why I fell into Charles's arms?" I didn't want to know. Honestly, I found it disgusting. But what I couldn't understand was that they had never gotten along before, so how could they betray me behind my back? Don't tell me the reason is because he wasn't satisfied. I spoke in one breath, clutching my mother's hand. She gently squeezed my hand, as if telling me I didn't need to be angry. Lynn burst into tears, her face filled with pain. "Yan, you might not believe me, but I've been suffering from severe depression for many years. Since my parents divorced and moved abroad, my condition worsened. I wanted to confide in you, but at that time you were so happy with Charles. I couldn't bear to ruin your joy, so I quietly sought treatment, hid everything, thinking it would get better. Honestly, I never liked Charles from the beginning. I hated his overly principled nature, and I hated even more that he took you away from me. You were no longer just my friend. I didn't want to share you with him, nor did I want to bother you with my negative emotions. I kept everything bottled up, and my condition became increasingly severe. After transferring to the new company, Charles and I had the opportunity to work together on a project. It was then that I realized I had hated him for no reason. Charles always listened to you and treated me very well. One time, during a business trip, at a dinner with clients, I was harassed by a man. He spilled wine on my lap and kept touching me. I was forced to drink too much, unable to resist. Charles rushed in and punched him, creating a chaotic scene. That day, both of us were drunk. Perhaps it was because I had been lonely for too long, or perhaps because the sorrow had accumulated too deeply. Combined with the alcohol, I couldn't control myself. Things just happened. At first, both he and I were incredibly remorseful. I thought about kneeling down and begging for your forgiveness, but I was too weak. I craved the feeling of being cared for by him, of being looked after by him, just like how he used to treat you. Charles said he was afraid that if you knew, you would be hurt and it would affect your health. So we agreed to wait until after the baby was born to confess and ask for your forgiveness. But then, one mistake piled on another. We couldn't stop, sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss. I'm sorry, Yan. You can hit me, scold me, but please don't abandon me. You are my only friend. I am truly more afraid of losing you than losing Charles. My mother suppressed her anger. listening to the whole story, but finally couldn't control herself anymore. She picked up the glass of water on the table and threw it directly into Lynn's face. She didn't say a word, and I didn't know when my tears had started to fall. I was heartbroken to learn she had depression and felt pity for her lonely months in a foreign land. But could those things be reasons for betrayal? I felt exhausted and subtly signaled to my mother that we could go home. Lynn completely broke down, sobbing and wanting to hold me back, but my mother pushed her hand away. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, glistening as before, but now only despair remained. This woman, this face, why did it suddenly become so unfamiliar? Without hesitation, I slapped her. This was the slap she owed me, but she owed me too much, and I no longer wanted to give her a chance to repay it. My due date was approaching. Finally, my mother and I had a few peaceful days. But then, Charles's mother came to find me. She heard that Charles and I had broken up, so she traveled all the way from her hometown just to plead for her son. My mother, no matter how angry, understood that it wasn't easy for her, so she didn't directly turn her away, but just told me to go into the bedroom and not come out. She poured her a cup of tea, but her attitude was cold and unfriendly. From the room, I could hear their conversation growing increasingly heated. Then, my mother-in-law's voice choked. It seemed she had started to cry. She said that Charles's work at the company was not easy, that he had sacrificed a lot for this family, and now he truly knew he was wrong. She begged me to forgive him. All men make mistakes sometimes. Spouses might argue in bed, but in the end, they still share the same bed and make up. I couldn't believe my ears. Anger surged. I walked out of the room to confront her. I am not as magnanimous as you, and I can never forgive your son, not in this lifetime. My mother-in-law was stunned to see me, my belly large. Her eyes showed a complex mix of joy and worry. She hastily brought 2 boxes of local specialties from the door into the house, her attitude both humble and slightly coercive. Yan, I will definitely discipline Charles very strictly, but look at your big belly. What will you do after the baby is born without a father? Your mother raised you alone before, and it was very difficult. You can't let yourself fall into that situation. These words made my mother tremble with anger. My daughter will live well even without your son. You don't need to be here to instruct her. Take your things and go, we don't need you too. Their back and forth was incredibly annoying. I was about to tell them to stop so I could have some peace when suddenly a sharp pain overwhelmed me. I groaned, cold sweat breaking out. My mother immediately let go and rushed to support me. It seems she's about to give birth. We need to get her to the hospital quickly. At this moment, the most important thing was the baby in my womb. My mother hastily drove, and the 3 of us immediately rushed to the hospital. Having to give birth under these circumstances was truly humiliating. On the way, my mother-in-law kept calling Charles, but I was in too much pain to think about anything else or care. As I was pushed into the delivery room, I seemed to see his figure. If it were before, how much I would long for him to be by my side. Even if he couldn't share the pain, at least my heart wouldn't be as empty and sorrowful as it was now. I prayed the baby would be born safely, but could a child without a father truly live happily? The agonizing pain made me despair. The pain of childbirth was truly something I would never forget. Many times I hurt so much I felt I couldn't bear it, even wanting to die to escape it. But for my child, I couldn't give up. I had to overcome this pain. I don't know how long passed. I was so exhausted I was almost unconscious, until in a daze I heard the faint cry of my baby. A nurse approached, gently saying, "Congratulations, madam. The baby weighs 3.3 kg. It's a boy." The pain subsided. I was too tired to even open my mouth to speak. Before closing my eyes, in a hazy moment, I saw Charles rushing in, his face full of worry, just like when he proposed to me, both panicked and joyful. But now, did any of that still matter? When I woke up, only my mother was in the room. She said the nurse had taken my son to be bathed, and Charles and his mother had gone with them. My mother, out of pity for me, stayed to care for me. As soon as she saw me open my eyes, she burst into tears. She held my hand, her voice choked. "Giving birth is like walking through the gates of hell. Are you still hurting? Are you tired?" My tears silently welled up, soaking the pillow. My mother hastily wiped her tears, trying to keep her voice gentle. "From now on, it'll just be the 3 of us, you, me, and your child. Are you scared?" I shook my head, crying, my voice weak but firm. "With you here, Mom, I'm not scared." Just then, Charles walked in, carrying our son. He pushed the door open, a smile still lingering on his lips. But when he saw me crying, his expression instantly darkened. He quickly came to the bedside, leaned down, and gently coaxed, Yan, look, it's our son. His eyes are so beautiful, just like yours. My mother-in-law also excitedly stepped forward, delightedly exclaiming, "Yes, this child is so handsome. He must have inherited all his parents' good looks. Look at my sweet grandson." So adorable, those words grated on my ears. My mother let out a soft HMPH, taking the baby from Charles's arms, simultaneously blocking them from me. I no longer had the strength to care about what they were saying, only silently watching my son in my mother's arms. The tiny baby was too small to clearly resemble anyone, but the feeling that he was my child stirred my heart deeply. For months of pregnancy, I had endured so much pain. Now, the baby who was once a part of my body had separated, becoming a tiny living being before my eyes. The emotions in my heart were a mix of happiness, pain, and bitterness, because the one who had just brought my child into the room was the one who had shattered my dreams. I looked up at Charles. He seemed to have guessed my thoughts and approached, gently calling, "Wife." Then he took my hand, his voice pleading, "You've been through so much. Let me take you home, okay? I truly know I was wrong. From now on, we'll be a happy family, won't we?" If these words had been spoken before, perhaps I would have been moved. But now I saw through him. I suddenly understood why Lynn had always disliked Charles, because he was too fake, too hypocritical. How ironic that I finally had to realize his true nature through someone else. My lips were dry, my throat parched. I suppressed all my emotions, my voice calm but icy. "I am no longer your wife, and from now on, my son has nothing to do with you." Charles's mother tried to use the baby to persuade me, while he cried and begged, but my mother was determined to cut all ties with their family. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother so angry that even I felt scared. The baby, startled by the tension, cried loudly, his wails piercing the suffocating atmosphere of the hospital room. Nurses rushed in to remind us to keep quiet. Finally, both Charles and his mother gave in. My mother silently left the room. The road to divorce was long, but for now, I needed to recover my health. After being discharged, my mother took me home to recover. She hired a caregiver to look after me. Charles still hadn't given up. Every day, he would arrive on time with nutritious soup, but my mother would calmly take it downstairs to feed the dogs. In the evening, he would stand outside the door, holding a bouquet of flowers and various baby supplies, but he didn't dare to step inside. My mother didn't need those things. She collected everything and donated it to the community. The caregiver would only sigh whenever she witnessed this scene, but didn't dare to say much. Recently, I hadn't been sleeping well. I had to wake up many times each night to breastfeed, and when I did sleep, I was plagued by nightmares. The day before my son's 1-month celebration, during an afternoon nap, I suddenly woke up with a start. In my dream, I saw blood everywhere, no one around. Suddenly, someone pushed me to the ground. The fear made me jolt awake. It was already dark outside. My mother had just walked into the house, and I suddenly felt my eyes twitching repeatedly. She said she had just seen Charles downstairs and scolded him fiercely, bringing her anger home. After giving birth, my mood was erratic. I was easily emotional, easily irritable, finding fault with everything. The recent nightmare made me even more agitated and uncomfortable. In a fit of anger, I argued with my mother. "Then don't care about me anymore, okay?" My shouting frightened the baby, who burst into tears in the bedroom. The atmosphere in the house became tense. The caregiver tried to comfort him, but he wouldn't stop crying. I went into the room to see my son. When I came out, I heard the door slam shut. My mother had left. I stood there, stunned for a moment, then called her. She said she was on her way to the spa because an employee had just reported someone causing trouble. Before she could finish, the other end of the line suddenly became chaotic. Shouts, crashing sounds, then a desperate scream. After that, the call disconnected. A bad premonition enveloped me, chilling me to the bone. I hastily called back, but no one answered. I continued to call Jenny, my mother's closest confidant. It wasn't until the 10th or so try that someone answered. Before I could even ask, a desperate cry echoed from the other end. Jenny's voice was trembling and broken. "The madam! She was stabbed multiple times, so much blood, the ambulance hasn't arrived yet. Sister, please come quickly." My whole body froze, my mind blank, my ears ringing. In that moment, my world seemed to collapse. I rushed down the stairs, not even bothering to grab a coat, running so fast that my slippers fell off, but I didn't care. The caregiver frantically called after me, but I heard nothing. Charles's car was still parked right in front of the building. Seeing me rush out in a frenzy, he immediately ran towards me. The cold wind cut into my skin, but it wasn't as cold as the fear in my heart. I ran too fast, my stomach cramping, my legs turning to jelly. The moment Charles touched me, I collapsed. He frantically asked what had happened, but I could only gasp. My mother? Quick, take me to the spa. The spa wasn't far. The car sped there. As soon as I got out, the scene before me froze me. Ambulances, police cars, crowds of people, streaks of blood splattered on the ground. I staggered into the crowd, pushing people aside. In a pool of blood, my mother lay motionless. My heart constricted. I screamed, "Where are the doctors? Where are the paramedics? Why isn't anyone saving her?" A police officer held me back, telling me to calm down. He said my mother had stopped breathing. His words were as cold as a blade, cutting deep into my heart. I shook my head repeatedly, wailing, "Why aren't they here? Why aren't they saving my mother?" But my screams gradually weakened, powerless. I collapsed to the ground, begging in despair, "Please save my mother." Charles draped his coat over me, trying to pull me up, but I couldn't be bothered to move. Not even the police could drag me away. I just hugged my mother, pressing my face against her heart, which had stopped beating, crying in despair. Around me were murmurs, constant camera clicks, Jenny's sobs, Charles saying something, but it all sounded like a vague murmur. It was so cold in winter, yet my mother was wearing so little. I hugged her, using my own warmth to warm her. She was in such a hurry she didn't even have time to stand up. She was so angry at me that she left without looking back. And what did I say? "Then don't care about me anymore, okay?" Those words were like a curse, and for the rest of my life, I would never forgive myself. Accepting the truth was never easy. Standing in the morgue, looking at my mother's cold, pale body, I finally understood that she was truly gone forever. Even though Charles tried everything to win me over, I had no mind to care about him. He tried to visit our son many times, but I flatly refused. Lynn also kept changing her number to call, but I blocked each one. Compared to the pain of losing my mother, everything Charles and Lynn had done suddenly seemed trivial, no longer worth bothering about. Throughout the investigation, I maintained a cold demeanor, not letting my heart soften even a little. With my mother gone, I seemed to have become her replica. I kept the anger within me, learned to be strong like my mother, and because of that, everything seemed so much easier. But most of the time, I felt I had lost the meaning of life. Day after day, I lived like a soulless body. Everyone around me worried that I would despair, and there were times when I truly wanted to give up everything. But then I looked at my son, the only family I had left. For him, I had to keep living. Finally, the day the culprit was punished arrived. He confessed to all his crimes. According to the investigation, he harbored resentment after being rejected and went to the place where the girl worked to cause trouble. My mother stepped in to protect a client and thus became a victim of his frenzy. He cruelly killed my mother in a fit of rage. His family was of high status. His parents were heartbroken by their son's crime, but accepted legal responsibility. Those words, though they sounded light, weighed like mountains in my heart. I only wished he could immediately pay for his sins, to be in hell forever. During that time, I lived in a state of blur. Besides cooperating with the police and consulting with lawyers, I also had to manage the work my mother left behind at the spa. After this great shock, the spa plummeted. I had to deal with staffing issues while also taking care of clients. I also couldn't let the caregiver take over childcare, because my son was the only motivation that helped me get through those dark days. His peace was what I longed for most. In addition, I also had to arrange to return to work. In those days steeped in grief, work became the only place where I felt I still had something to hold on to. Fortunately, I still received trust from the company leadership, Director Liu, and the entire team were ready to wait for my return. As for the divorce from Charles, it now seemed like a minor matter. At first, when I learned the truth, I was so devastated I felt like the whole world had collapsed. But now, looking back, it all seemed like a nightmare that had receded into the past. On the outside, I still looked busy, still normal, but only I knew that in the quiet late nights, I still silently cried on the balcony, tears soaking my clothes, while the pain remained heavy in my heart. Sometimes, holding my son, I would unconsciously shed tears, but looking at his smile, I couldn't bear to let the tears continue to fall. My son grew day by day. I completed the household registration procedures for him. I named him Chen Anning, hoping that his life would be peaceful and always safe. I took a portrait photo of him and another of my hand holding his. I placed them next to the photo of my mother and me, as if our 3 generations were reunited. Busy during the day, caring for my son at night, I gradually felt more clearly the responsibility of a mother. It's just a pity that my mother was no longer here. She was a strong woman, independent, resilient, decisive, and never yielding to anything throughout her life. Though strict, though often nagging to me, she would forever be a hero. I just wished she could have been with me a little longer. We had promised to overcome all difficulties together, yet she left me in this way. The investigation concluded. The perpetrator was sentenced to death, the highest penalty. The compensation for my mother's death, funeral expenses, and other financial matters were also about to be settled. With red eyes, I tried to arrange my mother's funeral meticulously. Yesterday's despair had receded. At the funeral home, many of my mother's old clients and friends came to offer condolences. They hugged me, sobbing. Bouquets of flowers and sincere words of sympathy brought me some comfort. Charles insisted on staying with me in the mourning hall. His eyes were redder than mine, and for the first time I didn't send him away. In the mourning hall, even though the heaters were on, I still felt cold. Chills came in waves. I just wanted my mother to wake up, to hear her complain a little more, to ask her if she felt warm. Charles advised me to get some sleep, but I ignored him, trying not to close my eyes. I was about to ask the caregiver about my son's situation, but an email appeared in my inbox from Lynn. Yan, perhaps this is my last letter and my final confession. Please read it all. I know I no longer have the right to be by your side, but when I heard about Auntie's accident, the only person I worried about was you. Do you know, you're actually a crybaby. When you were little, whenever you were hurt, you wouldn't say anything, just cry silently by yourself. I knew everything. Also, I never liked eating boiled snails or pork intestines, but because I didn't want to lose my only friend, you, I pretended to like them. It's a pity, now I've truly lost you. I know you're crying again this time. I hate myself for not being able to comfort you, not being able to face everything with you. I think I am the biggest sinner. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have had to leave home, wouldn't have had to endure the pain of childbirth alone, wouldn't have had to bear all the responsibilities. Perhaps Auntie wouldn't have left so suddenly. I don't know if these words will bring you any peace. After confessing to you, Charles and I completely ended things. Both of us are facing the consequences. He received complaints from clients, was removed from his project, and is about to be fired. As for me, I resigned. Before leaving my job, I went with the project team to entertain clients, but that time I encountered people even more despicable. They drugged my colleague and me, brought me back to the hotel. Lying on that bed, I knew no one could save me anymore. I was completely defiled, and I think this is God's punishment. My parents helped me report it to the police and file a lawsuit, but every day I can only go insane. I can't contact you, and I have no one left by my side. My depression is getting worse. I tried to cut my wrists. They confiscated all sharp objects in the house. I took a lot of sleeping pills and was taken to the hospital again for gastric lavage. Don't pity me. I brought all of this upon myself. The moment I hurt you and Auntie, I knew I couldn't have a good ending. When you read this email, I might already be on a flight to another country. My parents decided to send me to a sanatorium there. Actually, from beginning to end, Charles was always your Ultraman, and I was just a destructive monster who deserved to be driven away. I will disappear, never to bother you again. It's just a pity I never got to meet your son, but I'm sure he's very handsome with eyes like yours. Auntie watched us grow up like a second mother, but I've done her so wrong. I will go to hell, and I hope Auntie will rest in peace in heaven. Finally, Yan, can you cry a little less? Without me, this terrible friend, your life will surely be much brighter. I once hated Lynn, once blamed her, but she didn't deserve such a tragic fate. Those wretched men were the ones who deserved to go to hell. I don't know what Charles would think if he knew about this. A smoldering sorrow enveloped me like night. I sat silently until dawn. Today, I had to bid farewell to my mother at the cremation. As the small urn of ashes rested in my hands, I told myself that my mother would still be with me. Witnessing her turn to dust, my last ounce of strength drained away, but I had to stand up, had to continue for my son. Charles wanted to accompany me, but I refused. Thank you for being here with me to see my mother off, but this is enough. I don't have the strength to say anything more. From now on, don't look for me. Let's get a divorce. Charles looked at me, his eyes dim. He paused for a few seconds, tears falling, his voice choked. All right, Take care of yourself, Yan. I owe you my life. When my son turned 6 months old, I moved to City C, starting a new life. I wanted to escape this place full of pain to feel lighter. The plane took off, and 3 hours later it landed. I held my son, listening to the announcement, "Please continue moving, do not linger here." Perhaps I, too, should continue walking forward.